The morning sun streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Anderson Corp's penthouse office, where Alexander Chen stood gazing at the cityscape below. At 35, he had everything money could buy, except the one thing he desperately wanted, a child to carry on his legacy. Running his fingers through his dark hair, Alex turned away from the window and settled into his leather chair. The latest surrogacy agency documents lay spread across his desk, each profile carefully selected based on his strict criteria. But something felt different about today's meeting. When Rose Walker stepped into his office, she didn't carry herself like the other candidates he'd interviewed. There was no practiced smile or carefully rehearsed answers. Instead, she clutched her worn leather bag close, her simple floral dress a stark contrast to the modern minimalist office. "Please, have a seat," Alex gestured, studying her as she settled into the chair across from him. Her honey-brown hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, and her green eyes met his with surprising steadiness. "Thank you for considering my application, Mr. Chen," she began, her voice soft but clear. "I know I might not be what you're expecting." Alex raised an eyebrow. "And what am I expecting, Ms. Walker?" A slight blush colored her cheeks. "Well, most of the women I saw in the waiting room looked like they stepped out of a magazine. I'm just me." Her honesty caught him off guard, and for the first time in countless interviews, Alex found himself genuinely intrigued. "Tell me why you're here, Ms. Walker." "The truth." Rose's fingers twisted in her lap. "I need the money," she admitted. "But not for what you might think. I run a small bakery that also serves as a job training program for at-risk youth. We're about to lose our lease, and this could save everything we've built." Alex leaned back, his practiced skepticism warring with unexpected interest. "A bakery? That's quite different from the usual designer handbag wish lists I hear about." "Sweet Dreams Bakery," Rose nodded, growing more animated. "We've helped 23 kids get back on track in the past 2 years. Some are in college now, others have started their own businesses." She stopped suddenly, cheeks flushing deeper. "I'm sorry, you probably don't want to hear all this." But Alex did want to hear more. For the first time, he found himself listening to a candidate talk about something beyond themselves or his money. He watched as she described her programs, the way her eyes lit up when she talked about her student successes, the genuine passion in her voice. "Do you have any questions about the contract terms?" he asked when she finally fell silent. "The medical procedures, the restrictions, the timeline?" Rose straightened in her chair. "I've read everything thoroughly, Mr. Chen. I understand what's being asked of me, and I'm prepared for all of it. This isn't just about money for me anymore. It's about giving someone else the chance at a family, just like I try to give my kids a chance at a better life." Something shifted in Alex's chest, a recognition of something genuine in a world where he'd grown used to calculating every interaction. He found himself standing, extending his hand. "Well, Ms. Walker, I think we should schedule your medical screening." Her eyes widened. "Really? Just like that?" "Just like that," he confirmed, surprising himself with a small smile. "Unless you've changed your mind?" Rose stood quickly, shaking his hand with unexpected firmness. "No, no change of mind. Thank you, Mr. Chen. You won't regret this." As she left his office, Alex couldn't shake the feeling that his life was about to change in ways he hadn't anticipated. He'd planned everything meticulously, find a suitable surrogate, create his heir, maintain professional distance throughout the process. Simple, clean, efficient. But watching Rose's departing figure, he had a nagging suspicion that simple had just gone out his 60-story window. The next few weeks passed in a blur of medical appointments and legal paperwork. Alex found himself unusually invested in the process, actually reading the daily updates from the clinic instead of having his assistant summarize them. Rose passed every screening with flying colors, her healthy lifestyle from years of early morning baking apparently serving her well. He told himself his interest was purely practical, this woman would be carrying his child, after all. But when his assistant mentioned that Sweet Dreams Bakery had received an anonymous donation that would cover their lease for the next 5 years, Alex had to admit there might be more to it. The day of the embryo transfer arrived clear and cold. Alex hadn't planned to be at the clinic, he had 3 important meetings and a dinner with potential investors. But at 9 a.m., he found himself in the waiting room, his schedule mysteriously cleared. "Mr. Chen?" Rose's surprised voice made him look up from his phone. "I didn't expect to see you here." Neither had he, if he was being honest. "I thought, well, it seemed important to be here." Her smile was warm, genuine, and did strange things to his carefully maintained composure. "It is important. And I'm glad you're here." As she was led away by the nurses, Alex settled back into the uncomfortable plastic chair, his mind wandering to the future. He'd wanted an heir, a continuation of his family line, a practical solution to a practical problem. But watching Rose disappear down the hallway, he realized he might have found something entirely different, something that no amount of money could buy. He just wasn't sure he was ready to admit what that something might be. The first signs of morning sickness caught Rose off guard 3 weeks after the procedure. She was in the middle of teaching a teenager named Tommy how to make croissants when the smell of baking butter suddenly had her rushing to the bathroom. When she emerged, pale but composed, she found Alex Chen waiting in her tiny office, his expensive suit looking comically out of place among her collection of well-worn cookbooks. "My assistant mentioned you weren't feeling well," he said, his dark eyes showing unexpected concern. "I thought I should check on my investment." Rose couldn't help but notice his hesitation on the last word. "Your investment is fine, Mr. Chen. Just normal morning sickness." "Alex," he corrected automatically. "After all, you are carrying my child. I think we can move past formalities." She smiled despite her lingering nausea. "Alex, then. But really, you didn't need to come all the way down here. I'm sure you have more important things to do than watch me throw up in a bakery bathroom." His expression shifted, becoming almost vulnerable. "Actually, I wanted to discuss something with you. Would you join me for dinner tonight? Somewhere with bland food," he added quickly, seeing her face pale slightly. Rose wanted to refuse. The contract had been clear about maintaining professional boundaries, and dinner felt distinctly unprofessional. But there was something in his eyes that made her nod. "Okay, but I get to pick the place." That's how Alex Chen, Billionaire CEO, found himself sitting in a tiny diner 6 hours later, watching Rose order plain toast and ginger tea. The vinyl booth squeaked every time he moved, and the laminated menu had definitely seen better days, but somehow it felt right. "This is where I come when I need to think," Rose explained, wrapping her hands around the warm mug. "No pretense, just good simple food and quiet." Alex looked around, taking in the worn but clean surroundings. "It's different." "Different can be good," she said softly, meeting his eyes. "Now, what did you want to discuss?" He straightened, slipping into what Rose had started thinking of as his business mode. "I've been thinking about the arrangements for the pregnancy. The contract specified you would continue your normal activities unless medically advised otherwise, but I'm concerned about the physical demands of running a bakery." Rose felt her defenses rise. "I'm not giving up the bakery, Alex. Those kids depend on me." "I'm not asking you to," he said quickly. "I'm offering to help. To hire additional staff, maybe a manager to handle the physical work while you focus on the training programs." She sat back, studying him. "Why?" "Because." He paused, seeming to choose his words carefully. "Because I want to ensure the best possible environment for my child. And because I've seen what you do there. It matters." The simple sincerity in his voice made her throat tight. "Thank you, but I can't accept that. It's too much." Consider it a business investment, he pressed. In fact, I'd like to discuss expanding your program. With proper funding and support, you could help more kids, create more opportunities. Rose felt tears threatening and blamed the pregnancy hormones. You don't have to do this. The surrogacy payment is more than generous. Alex reached across the table, his hand covering hers. The touch sent unexpected warmth through her body. This isn't about the surrogacy, Rose. This is about recognizing something valuable and wanting to help it grow. She looked down at their joined hands, knowing she should pull away but not wanting to. I don't understand you, Alex Chen. 1 minute you're all business, talking about investments and contracts, and the next. The next, he prompted when she fell silent. Rose finally withdrew her hand, wrapping her arms around herself. The next you're here, in this tiny diner, talking about helping kids you've never met and looking at me like what? His voice had grown husky. Like I'm more than just a surrogate, she whispered. The silence that followed felt heavy with unspoken things. Finally, Alex cleared his throat. Maybe you are. Before Rose could respond, her phone buzzed. Looking at the screen, she gasped. There's a problem at the bakery. The evening supervisor just called. Tommy tried to steal from the register. Alex was on his feet immediately. I'll drive you. The ride to the bakery was tense, but not because of their interrupted conversation. Rose's mind was racing with worry about Tommy, one of her most promising students. When they arrived, they found the teenager sitting dejectedly in her office, the evening supervisor standing guard at the door. I'll handle this, Rose told the supervisor, who left with obvious relief. She turned to Tommy, taking in his hunched shoulders and refused to meet her eyes. Want to tell me what happened? Just fire me and call the cops, he muttered. That's what everyone else does. To Rose's surprise, Alex stepped forward. Is that what you want? To throw away everything you've learned here? Tommy's head snapped up, finally noticing the imposing figure in the expensive suit. Who are you? Someone who knows what it's like to feel trapped, Alex said quietly. Someone who had people believe in him when he didn't believe in himself. Rose watched in amazement as Alex pulled up a chair, speaking to Tommy with unexpected gentleness. The story that emerged was sadly familiar: pressure from old friends, threats, a desperate attempt to protect a younger sibling. I just needed the money fast, Tommy finished, tears finally breaking free. I was gonna pay it back, I swear. Rose knelt beside him. We could have helped if you'd just told me. That's what we're here for. We still can help, Alex added, making Rose look at him sharply. If you're willing to trust us and do the work. Later, after Tommy had left with a second chance and a plan to help his family legally, Rose turned to Alex. Thank you. Not many people would have taken the time to listen. He stepped closer, his hand coming up to brush a tear from her cheek. Not many people would have created a place where kids like Tommy can find hope. The touch of his fingers on her skin made her breath catch. They were standing too close, the air between them charged with something that definitely violated their contract. Rose took a step back, her hand instinctively going to her still flat stomach. Alex, we can't, this isn't. She struggled to find the right words. I know, he said softly. But I'm starting to think there are some things more important than contracts. As he left the bakery, Rose sank into her chair, her mind spinning. She was carrying his baby, helping him create the family he wanted. That was supposed to be the end of the story. So why did it feel like their story was just beginning? As her 4th month of pregnancy progressed, Rose found herself adapting to a new normal. The morning sickness had finally subsided, replaced by an ever-growing baby bump and increasingly complicated feelings about the baby's father. Alex had become a regular presence at the bakery, his sleek car parked outside at least twice a week, always with a different excuse for his visits. Today, he claimed he was there to discuss the expansion plans, but Rose caught him in the kitchen, learning how to knead bread dough from 16-year-old Lily, his suit jacket discarded and his expensive shirt sleeves rolled up. "You're pressing too hard," Lily instructed, completely unfazed by teaching a billionaire how to bake. "You want to fold it, not fight it." Rose leaned against the doorframe, watching Alex's face scrunch in concentration as he adjusted his technique. The sight made her heart do strange things in her chest. "I never thought I'd see Alex Chen taking orders from a teenager," she called out. He looked up, flour streaking his cheek, and something in his expression made her breath catch. "I'm learning all sorts of new things these days." Lily looked between them, rolling her eyes in typical teenage fashion. "I'm gonna go check on the display case," she announced, leaving them alone in the warm, flour-dusted kitchen. "You don't have to do this, you know," Rose said softly, moving to stand beside him at the work table. "Learn to bake, spend time here, it's not in the contract." Alex's hands stilled in the dough. "Maybe I want to understand the world my child will be part of." "Your child will be part of your world, Alex. Penthouses and private schools and everything I read about in those society magazines." He turned to face her, his dark eyes intense. "And what if I'm starting to think my world could use a little more of this?" He gestured around the homey kitchen. "More real things, more people who care about something beyond profit margins?" Rose felt her pulse quicken. "Alex. I had dinner with my mother last night," he said abruptly. "I told her about the baby." Rose's hand flew to her swollen belly protectively. "Oh? How did she take it?" His laugh was without humor. "About as well as you'd expect. She demanded to know everything about the surrogate carrying her grandchild. Your background, your family, your credentials." "And what did you tell her?" "I told her about sweet dreams. About the lives you've changed here. About how you took a chance on Tommy when everyone else had given up on him, and now he's applying to culinary school." Alex stepped closer, his voice dropping. "I told her how you make everyone around you want to be better, do better." Rose felt tears threatening, damn pregnancy hormones. "Alex, please, we can't." "Can't what?" "Can't admit that something is happening here? Something neither of us planned?" Before she could respond, a commotion from the front of the bakery caught their attention. They hurried out to find an elegant older woman in expensive designer clothes standing in the middle of the shop, looking around with poorly concealed disdain. "Mother," Alex said, his voice tight. "What are you doing here?" Mrs. Chen's sharp eyes fixed on Rose, taking in her flour-dusted maternity dress and simple appearance. "So this is her? The woman carrying my grandchild?" Rose straightened her spine, meeting the older woman's gaze steadily. "I'm Rose Walker. Welcome to Sweet Dreams Bakery." "A bakery," Mrs. Chen said flatly. "Alexander, surely you can't be serious about allowing my grandchild to be exposed to this." "Mother," Alex's voice held a warning, but Rose stepped forward. "Would you like a tour, Mrs. Chen? See what we actually do here?" The older woman looked like she wanted to refuse, but proper breeding won out. "Very well." For the next hour, Rose showed Mrs. Chen around her domain. She introduced her to Lily, who was now teaching other teens the basics of baking. She showed her the classroom where they taught business skills, and the small office where they helped students apply for further education or jobs. "Tommy's starting culinary school next month," Rose explained, showing Mrs. Chen a wall of success stories, photos of grinning teenagers in bakery uniforms or graduating with certificates. "And Maya just opened her own catering business." "And you did all this yourself?" Mrs. Chen asked, her tone slightly less icy. "Rose believes in people until they learn to believe in themselves," Alex said quietly. "It's a rare gift." His mother turned to study him, something shifting in her expression. "You've changed, Alexander." "Yes," he admitted. "I have. Later, after Mrs. Chen had left with a box of freshly baked pastries she claimed she wouldn't eat, Alex found Rose in her office, looking tired. "I'm sorry about my mother," he began, but Rose shook her head. "Don't be. She loves you, wants the best for your child." "I understand that. Rose." He moved closer, and she could feel the warmth radiating from his body. "What if the best thing for my child is having two parents who care about making the world better? Who understand that success isn't just about money?" She looked up at him, her heart pounding. "That's not what we agreed to. I'm just the surrogate, remember? 9 months, then I go back to my life, and you go back to yours. And if I don't want to go back?" His hand came up to cup her cheek. "If I want to build something new? Something that includes fresh bread in the morning and teenagers learning to believe in themselves and you?" Rose felt tears spilling down her cheeks. "You're just confused. Caught up in the emotion of the pregnancy. Once the baby comes, I want him or her to grow up knowing both sides of life. The penthouses and the bakeries. The board rooms and the kitchens. Most importantly, I want our child to know love, real love, not the kind that comes with conditions and social expectations. Alex, please." But she couldn't finish, because his lips were on hers, soft and sure and tasting of flour and possibilities. When they finally parted, Rose whispered against his mouth, "This is going to complicate everything." He smiled, his forehead resting against hers. "Some things are worth complicating." As if in agreement, the baby chose that moment to kick for the first time, making them both laugh in wonder. Standing in her tiny office, surrounded by the smell of fresh bread and new dreams, Rose realized that sometimes the best things in life came from breaking the rules and baking something entirely new. The news broke on a quiet Tuesday morning. Rose was teaching a group of students how to make chocolate eclairs when her phone started buzzing incessantly. Opening her social media, her heart dropped at the headlines. Billionaire Alex Chen's unconventional romance with surrogate mother sparks controversy. Someone had photographed their kiss in the bakery window last week. The picture was everywhere, along with speculation about their relationship and questions about the ethics of it all. Within hours, reporters had gathered outside Sweet Dreams Bakery, their cameras flashing through the windows. "Ms. Walker?" Tommy's worried voice broke through her panic. "There are people trying to come in the back door too." Rose took a deep breath, protecting her growing belly instinctively. She was 6 months pregnant now, and the baby seemed to sense her distress, kicking more vigorously than usual. "Okay, everyone in the classroom. Away from the windows." Once she had her students safely gathered, she called Alex. He answered on the first ring. "Rose, I'm so sorry. I'm sending security right now." "Alex, they're frightening the kids. Some of these teenagers have already had rough lives, they don't need this." "I know, sweetheart. I'm handling it. Just stay inside, okay? Don't talk to anyone." But it wasn't that simple. By afternoon, the story had grown. Old photos of Rose had surfaced, including ones from her struggling days before the bakery. Critics called her a gold digger, suggesting she'd planned this all along. Others questioned whether she was fit to run a youth program given the scandal. The worst blow came when parents started calling, worried about letting their teens continue in the program with all the media attention. Rose sat in her office, trying not to cry as another parent expressed their concerns. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. Looking up, she found Mrs. Chen standing in her doorway, immaculately dressed as always. "I thought I might find you hiding in here," the older woman said, closing the door behind her. Rose straightened, ready to defend herself, but Mrs. Chen held up a hand. "Before you say anything, I want you to know that I had my investigator look into you thoroughly after our first meeting." "Of course you did," Rose couldn't keep the bitterness from her voice. "Yes, and do you know what he found?" A woman who grew up in foster care, worked 3 jobs to put herself through business school, and then used her savings to start a program helping troubled youth instead of chasing wealth. Mrs. Chen's expression softened slightly. Not exactly the gold digger they're painting you as. Rose felt tears threatening again. It doesn't matter what's true. This attention is hurting the bakery, hurting the kids. Then we fight back, a new voice said. Alex stood in the doorway, looking determined. Mother, thank you for coming. Mrs. Chen nodded. I've already called Richard at the Times. He owes me a favor. We can give them an exclusive, control the narrative. Rose looked between them, confused. What are you talking about? Alex moved to her side, taking her hand. We tell our story, Rose. The real story. Not their twisted version. But the contract. She began. Can be amended, Mrs. Chen interrupted. I've already spoken with the lawyers. Rose stared at her. Why would you help us? I thought you disapproved. The elegant woman actually smiled. I disapproved of what I imagined you to be. The reality, well, let's just say I've never seen my son happier or more focused on what truly matters. Before Rose could respond, she heard raised voices from the front of the bakery. Tommy burst in, looking panicked. Ms. Walker. They're saying the youth program might lose its funding because of the scandal. The board is meeting tomorrow to decide. Rose felt her world spinning. Everything she'd built, everything these kids needed, all at risk because she'd fallen in love when she wasn't supposed to. That's not happening, Alex said firmly. He turned to his mother. How quickly can you arrange that interview? Give me an hour, Mrs. Chen was already on her phone. And I'll call the board members, Alex added. Every one of them has benefited from my company's business at some point. They'll listen. Rose shook her head. I don't want you strong-arming people, Alex. That's not how I do things. Then we'll show them instead, he said. His eyes lit up with an idea. Tommy, get everyone together. All the current students, and any graduates who can come. Mother, call the Times and tell them to bring a photographer. Rose, trust me. She looked into his eyes, seeing not the powerful CEO but the man who'd learned to knead bread dough just to understand her world better. Always. The next few hours were a blur of activity. Former students poured in, having seen the news and wanting to help. They brought their college acceptance letters, photos of the businesses they'd started, stories of how sweet dreams had changed their lives. The Times reporter arrived to find not a scandal, but a community. She watched as Alex Chen, Billionaire CEO, stood shoulder to shoulder with former gang members turned entrepreneurs, all of them defending the program and the woman who'd believed in them. This isn't just about Rose and me, Alex told the reporter, his arms steady around Rose's waist. It's about what happens when someone sees potential where others see problems. When love and trust replace judgment and doubt. The story ran the next morning, Sweet Dreams and Second Chances, the true story behind the headlines. It featured photos of successful graduates, quotes from community leaders about the program's impact, and yes, the truth about Rose and Alex's unexpected love story. The board meeting was cancelled. The funding was secured. And something else unexpected happened, applications to the program tripled as more people learned about its success. That evening, Rose found Alex in their usual booth at the diner, a pile of papers in front of him. What's all this? Expansion plans, he said, pulling her down beside him. And before you protest, this isn't about me throwing money around. These are funding applications, partnership proposals, ways to grow what you've built the right way. Rose leaned against him, feeling the baby kick between them. When did you have time to do all this? While you were teaching the afternoon class. Did you know you scrunch your nose when you're concentrating? It's adorable. She laughed, then grew serious. "Alex, are you sure about all this? Your investors will either support us or find somewhere else to put their money," he said firmly. "I spent years chasing what I thought success looked like. Then I walked into a bakery and found what really matters." Rose felt the baby kick again and guided his hand to the spot. "We're quite a pair, aren't we? The CEO and the baker, breaking all the rules." He kissed her softly. "Making new ones. Better ones." As they sat together in the quiet diner, planning their future over lukewarm coffee and toast, Rose marveled at how life's biggest changes often came disguised as simple choices. A decision to help kids find their way. A contract that was supposed to be just business. A love that refused to follow the rules. And somehow, all of it felt exactly right. At 8 months pregnant, Rose waddled through Sweet Dreams Bakery, her hands resting on her lower back. The morning sun streamed through windows now free of reporter cameras, the media circus having moved on to fresher scandals. But the changes their story had brought remained, transforming both their lives in unexpected ways. The bakery had expanded, now occupying the entire building. 3 new training kitchens hummed with activity, and a coffee shop run entirely by program graduates had opened next door. But it wasn't just the physical space that had grown, the whole atmosphere had shifted, filled with a sense of possibility. "Ms. Walker." Lily called from one of the training kitchens. "Come quick. Tommy's back from his first semester at culinary school, and you have to see what he made." Rose smiled, making her way toward the excited voices. The sight that greeted her made her pause in the doorway. Tommy stood proudly beside a stunning 3-tiered cake, its surface decorated with delicate sugar flowers that looked almost real. "Tommy," she breathed, "this is beautiful." The young man beamed, his former tough guy image completely forgotten. "They're teaching us advanced sugar work this semester. And guess what? My professor said I have a natural talent for it." "Of course you do," a familiar voice said from behind Rose. She turned to find Alex watching from the doorway, his tie loosened and sleeves rolled up as had become his habit here. "You just needed someone to give you the chance to discover it." Tommy straightened, still somewhat awed by Alex despite their growing familiarity. "Mr. Chen, sir. I didn't expect you here today." "Alex," he corrected gently, as he always did. "And I wouldn't miss your triumphant return." Besides, his hand came to rest protectively on Rose's back. "Someone needs to make sure this one actually takes her afternoon rest." Rose started to protest, but the baby chose that moment to deliver a particularly strong kick. Okay, she conceded. "But first, I want to try Tommy's cake." As they gathered around the kitchen island, sharing cake and stories about Tommy's culinary school adventures, Rose felt overwhelmed with emotion. This was her family now, not just Alex and their unborn child, but all of these young people who'd found their way to sweet dreams. Later, as she reluctantly settled onto the comfortable couch Alex had insisted on installing in her office, she watched him reviewing building plans with their contractor. They were converting the building's top floor into a comfortable apartment, combining their worlds just as they'd combined their lives. "The nursery windows should be bigger," Alex was saying. "Rose loves natural light, and I want the baby to wake up to sunshine." The contractor nodded, making notes. "And the kitchen?" "Professional grade everything," Alex replied without hesitation. "It's not just for us, Rose wants to use it for advanced classes once the baby's older." Rose felt her heart swell. He understood her so well now, knew that she'd never be content to stop teaching, to stop helping others find their path. Just as she understood his drive to excel, to build something meaningful. "You're supposed to be resting," Alex said, catching her watching them. "I'm comfortable here," she protested. "Besides, I like watching you plan our future." He dismissed the contractor and came to sit beside her, pulling her feet into his lap to massage them. "Speaking of our future, there's something I want to ask you." Rose felt her heart skip. Alex. He reached into his pocket and pulled out not a ring box, as she'd half expected, but a stack of papers. I want to change the contract. She blinked, confused. What? The surrogacy contract. I want to void it completely. His eyes were intense, focused entirely on her. I don't want any legal documents defining our relationship, Rose. I don't want our child born into an arrangement. I want. A sharp pain cut through Rose's abdomen, making her gasp. Alex's face went pale. Rose? What's wrong? I think. She breathed through another contraction. I think the baby has other plans for this conversation. The next few hours passed in a blur of activity. Alex's carefully prepared hospital plan was forgotten as Rose insisted she felt safer at the nearby community hospital where many of her students' families went. He'd agreed immediately, understanding as always what mattered most to her. In the delivery room, Rose gripped his hand through each contraction, their feet tangling beneath the thin hospital blanket. Tell me again, she panted, what you were going to say. About the contract. Alex leaned close, his forehead pressing against hers. I was going to say that I don't want a surrogate or a business arrangement. I want a wife. A partner. A family built on love and choice, not legal obligations. Tears mixed with sweat on Rose's cheeks. You have the worst timing, you know that? He laughed softly. Is that a yes? Another contraction hit before she could answer. The doctor's voice cut through their private moment. Okay, Rose, it's time to push. Hours later, as the first light of dawn painted the hospital room in soft gold, Rose held their daughter while Alex perched on the edge of the bed, his arm around them both. The baby had his dark hair and Rose's green eyes, a perfect blend of them both. She's beautiful, Alex whispered, touching their daughter's tiny hand with wonder. Just like her mother. Rose looked up at him, exhausted but happy. Yes. Yes, she's beautiful. I know that. Yes to everything, Rose clarified. Yes to being your wife. Yes to building a family. Yes to combining our worlds permanently. His kiss was gentle, mindful of her exhaustion, but full of promise. I love you. Both of you. A soft knock interrupted them. To their surprise, they found Tommy, Lily, and several other Sweet Dream students in the doorway, carrying a beautiful cake decorated with tiny sugar booties and bottles. We've been baking all night, Tommy explained. Had to make sure the baby's first day was properly celebrated. Mrs. Chen appeared behind the teenagers, looking only slightly out of place in her designer suit among the young bakers. I hope you don't mind, she said to Rose. But they insisted their little sister needed a proper welcome. Rose felt fresh tears as she looked at their unusual family, the powerful CEO who'd learned to bake bread, the elegant society woman who'd learned to see beyond appearances, the former troubled teens who'd found their calling in her kitchen, and the tiny baby who somehow embodied all their hopes and dreams. Welcome to Sweet Dreams, little one, she whispered to her daughter. Where anything is possible if you just believe. Alex's arm tightened around them. And where love is the most important ingredient of all. Outside the hospital window, the morning sun painted the city in shades of promise, while inside, a family born of an unexpected contract celebrated the newest chapter in their ever-expanding story. The sun hadn't yet risen over the city when little Hope Chen made her opinions known, her crying echoing through the newly finished apartment above Sweet Dreams Bakery. At 3 months old, she had already mastered the art of making her parents dance to her tune. I've got her, Alex murmured, pressing a kiss to Rose's temple as she started to stir. You've been up with her twice already. Rose watched through half-closed eyes as her billionaire fiancé, still a strange thought, padded across the room to their daughter's crib, wearing simple pajama pants and looking nothing like the powerful CEO the world knew him as. Come here, little baker, he cooed, lifting Hope into his arms. It was his special nickname for her, born from the way she liked to knead her tiny fists against his chest. Let's let Mama sleep a bit more. Rose smiled, listening to him walk their daughter around the apartment, pointing out the pre-dawn stars through the floor-to-ceiling windows he'd insisted on installing. His voice drifted back to her, soft and tender. See those lights down there? That's where Mama teaches people to believe in themselves. And one day, when you're bigger, you'll understand what a gift that is. The peaceful moment was interrupted by Rose's phone buzzing. She grabbed it quickly before it could wake Hope, who had finally settled in Alex's arms. The message was from Tommy, "Turn on the business news now." Frowning, Rose reached for the remote. The TV flickered to life, and her heart sank at the headline scrolling across the bottom of the screen. Chen Industries Board calls emergency meeting, CEO's leadership questioned. Alex, she called softly, not wanting to startle the baby. He turned, his face hardening as he read the news. It's fine, he said, but she could hear the tension in his voice. We knew some of the board members weren't happy about my reduced hours and new priorities. Rose sat up, fully awake now. They're saying you're distracted, that the company's suffering because you're focusing too much on personal projects. They mean us, don't they? The bakery, the youth program. Hey, Alex settled beside her, Hope sleeping peacefully against his chest. Look at me. Nothing is more important than this. Than us. But your company. We'll either adapt to my new vision or find someone else to lead it, he said firmly. I meant what I said the day Hope was born. I want to build something meaningful, something that matters. Rose touched their daughter's dark curls, so like her father's. Your company matters too, Alex. It employs thousands of people, supports countless families. Which is exactly why it needs to change. His eyes lit up with the same passion she'd first fallen in love with. Don't you see? We can do more. The youth program you've built here, imagine if every Chen Industries location had something similar. Job training, mentorship, real opportunities. A knock at their door interrupted his vision of the future. Mrs. Chen entered, already immaculately dressed despite the early hour. I assume you've seen the news? Mother, Alex started, but she held up a hand. Let me speak. I've just spent 2 hours on the phone with our major shareholders. Do you know what convinced them to support you? She pulled out her tablet, bringing up a series of charts. The data from Sweet Dreams. The success rates, the economic impact, the positive press, it's all translatable to corporate success. Rose leaned forward, interested despite her worry. What do you mean? Mrs. Chen's eyes softened as she looked at her granddaughter. Since Alexander began implementing programs inspired by your work, paid apprenticeships, education support, community engagement, employee retention has improved by 40%. Productivity is up. Our public image has never been better. The board meeting. Alex began. Is being led by Richardson, his mother cut in. The same Richardson who's been trying to take your position for years. He's gathered a few supporters, yes, but he doesn't have the votes. Hope chose that moment to wake, making her presence known with a demanding cry. Rose automatically reached for her, but Mrs. Chen got there first, scooping up her granddaughter with practiced ease. Hello, my little dumpling, she cooed, all traces of the formidable businesswoman vanishing. Shall we go make your bottle while your parents save the family company? Rose watched in amazement as her future mother-in-law glided away with Hope, humming a Chinese lullaby. Sometimes I still can't believe how much has changed. Alex pulled her close. Good changes. The best, she agreed. But Alex, what if the board members have a point? Not about the company's suffering, but about finding a balance? Maybe there's a way to do both, run your company and pursue these new initiatives. He was quiet for a moment, thinking. What if we formalized it? Created a proper foundation, with you at the helm? Rose sat up straighter. What do you mean? The Chen Foundation for Youth Development, he said, warming to the idea. Independent from the company but working in partnership with it. You could expand your programs, help other communities set up similar initiatives. We could offer graduates direct paths to employment or business support. That's actually brilliant, Rose admitted. But Alex, I don't know anything about running a foundation. He laughed softly. And I didn't know anything about baking bread 3 months ago. We'll learn together. From the kitchen, they could hear Mrs. Chen speaking in rapid-fire Mandarin on her phone while simultaneously preparing Hope's bottle. The baby's happy gurgles provided a strange soundtrack to what was clearly an intense business conversation. We should get ready, Alex said reluctantly. The board meeting's in 2 hours. Rose squared her shoulders. I'm coming with you. Rose, you don't have to. Yes, I do. She met his eyes firmly. We're partners now, remember? In everything. His kiss was quick but full of feeling. What did I ever do to deserve you? You learned to make bread, she teased, then grew serious. You saw beyond the surface, just like I try to teach my kids to do. You weren't afraid to build something new. They dressed quickly, Alex in one of his impeccable suits, Rose in a simple but elegant dress that reflected her new role as both baker and future foundation director. When they emerged, they found Mrs. Chen had not only fed Hope but had also arranged for Tommy and Lily to come up from the bakery. We'll watch the little princess, Lily assured them, already making funny faces at Hope. You go show those stuffy board members what really matters. Tommy, now in his chef's whites from culinary school, nodded. And I'll have a victory cake ready when you get back. Looking around at their unusual family, the tough-love grandmother, the former troubled teens turned responsible adults, and the tiny baby who had somehow catalyzed it all, Rose felt a surge of confidence. They had built something special here, something that defied expectations and broke molds. Ready? Alex asked, offering his arm. Rose took it, standing tall beside him. Ready. Let's go show them how sweet dreams become reality. 1 year had passed since the day Rose first walked into Alex's office, nervous and determined, carrying dreams bigger than herself. Now, on a bright spring morning, she stood in front of Sweet Dreams Bakery's newest location, a beautiful historic building in the heart of downtown, its windows gleaming with fresh paint and possibility. Ready for the grand opening? Alex's voice was soft in her ear as his arms wrapped around her from behind, careful not to wrinkle her elegant cream dress. Almost, she smiled, turning to adjust his tie. Hard to believe how much has changed in a year. As if on cue, Hope's delighted giggle rang out from nearby, where Mrs. Chen was showing her granddaughter the colorful display of pastries in the window. At 15 months old, Hope was a perfect blend of her parents, Alex's determined focus combined with Rose's compassionate heart. Mama. Dada. Look. Hope pointed excitedly at the window, her little face pressed against the glass. Yes, Angel, Rose laughed. Those are Tommy's special butterfly cookies. He made them just for today. The mention of Tommy brought a proud smile to both their faces. After graduating with honors from culinary school, he had become Sweet Dreams' first executive pastry chef, overseeing their growing network of bakeries while mentoring new students. The press is starting to arrive, Mrs. Chen announced, lifting Hope into her arms. And the foundation board members are gathering in the conference room upstairs. Rose took a deep breath, smoothing her dress. The past year had been a whirlwind of changes, challenges, and triumphs. The Chen Foundation for Youth Development had grown beyond their wildest dreams, with programs now running in 3 cities and plans for national expansion. The board meeting that had threatened Alex's position had turned into an unexpected victory. When Rose stood beside him, presenting their vision for combining corporate success with community impact, even the staunchest critics had been won over. The resulting publicity had brought investors eager to be part of something meaningful, and Chen Industries stock had soared. Ms. Walker. Mr. Chen. Lily's voice cut through Rose's memories. Their former student, now the Foundation's youth outreach coordinator, hurried toward them. Everything's ready inside. The first group of students is here too. They followed Lily into the building, where the scent of fresh bread mingled with the excitement of new beginnings. The space had been designed to be both beautiful and functional, state-of-the-art training kitchens alongside comfortable classroom spaces and a bustling cafe. "This is amazing," one of the new students whispered, eyes wide as she took in the professional equipment. Rose recognized the look. It was the same one she'd seen in Tommy's eyes that first day at the original bakery. "Welcome to Sweet Dreams," she said warmly. "Where anything is possible. As long as you're willing to work for it," Tommy added, emerging from the kitchen in his chef's whites. He carried a stunning cake, its tiers decorated with delicate sugar flowers and butterflies emerging from books, a symbol of transformation that had become their program signature. The opening ceremony was a blur of speeches, photographs, and heartfelt moments. Rose watched with pride as Tommy demonstrated advanced pastry techniques for the cameras, while Lily led tours for potential corporate partners. Mrs. Chen, still impeccably styled despite having a toddler on her hip, charmed investors with stories of how the program had transformed her own understanding of success. But the moment that brought tears to Rose's eyes was when Alex took the podium, their daughter reaching for him from her grandmother's arms. "A year ago," he began, taking Hope and settling her naturally on his hip, "I thought I knew what success looked like. I had the corner office, the business empire, all the trappings of achievement. But I was missing something essential: purpose." He looked at Rose, his eyes full of love. "Then I met a baker who taught me that true success isn't measured in profit margins, but in lives changed. In dreams supported. In love given freely." Walking to Rose's side, he continued, "Sweet Dreams isn't just a bakery or a training program. It's proof that when we believe in people, when we give them the tools, support, and love they need, amazing things happen." Hope chose that moment to reach for one of Tommy's butterfly cookies, making everyone laugh as she managed to get frosting on her father's expensive suit. "Perfect timing, little baker," Alex chuckled, using his pocket square to wipe Hope's hands. "Because that's another lesson we've learned: life doesn't have to be perfect to be wonderful." Later, after the crowds had thinned and the evening light painted the bakery in soft gold, Rose found herself in the quiet of the teaching kitchen. She ran her hand along the smooth countertop, remembering the tiny bakery where it all began. "Penny for your thoughts?" Alex's voice was soft as he joined her, Hope sleeping peacefully against his shoulder. "I was just thinking about that first day in your office," she smiled. "How nervous I was, how determined to save my little bakery. I never imagined that you'd end up with a billionaire, a baby, and a foundation," he teased. "That I'd end up finding a family," she corrected, reaching up to touch Hope's curls. "Not just you and Hope, but all of it, the students, the community we've built, even your mother." Speaking of family, Alex shifted Hope gently as he reached into his pocket. "I know we've been a bit busy this past year, but I think it's time we made it official." Rose's breath caught as he pulled out a small box. "Alex." "Wait," he said softly. "Let me do this right." Carefully balancing their sleeping daughter, he lowered himself to one knee. "Rose Walker, you walked into my office looking for a contract, but you gave me a life instead. You taught me that love isn't a business transaction, that family isn't defined by blood, and that the sweetest dreams are the ones we build together." Tears blurred Rose's vision as he opened the box, revealing a stunning yet understated ring. "Will you marry me? Not because of contracts or obligations or what anyone expects, but because we choose each other, every day." "Yes," she whispered, then laughed as Hope stirred just enough to mumble, "yes," in her sleep. The ring slid perfectly onto her finger, catching the last rays of sunset streaming through the windows. From somewhere in the building, they could hear Tommy and Lily's voices raised in excited chatter, probably already planning the wedding cake. "I love you," Rose said softly, careful not to wake Hope as she leaned in to kiss her fiancé. "All of this, the foundation, the new bakery, our family, it's better than any dream I could have imagined." "That's because it's real," Alex smiled, pulling her close with his free arm. "As real as bread dough and sugar flowers and second chances." They stood together in the quiet kitchen, their daughter sleeping between them, surrounded by the legacy of love they'd built. Outside, the city lights began to twinkle, each one representing a dream waiting to be realized, a life waiting to be transformed. And in that moment, Rose knew that while their story had begun with a contract, it would continue with something far more powerful, the simple, profound magic of believing in love, in possibilities, and in the power of sweet dreams come true.